Coming up, Durant shines in his debut for Phoenix, and the Bucks stretch their win streak to 16. This is Locked On Game to Game, NBA.
Every game, every team, every angle. Locked On Game to Game, your team every day.
Welcome in. You are listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. Local experts join us to go over the biggest stories on the hardwood. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you so much for making Locked On your first listen every single weekday. Couldn't ask for much more in Kevin Durant's first game back in a couple of months. Also his first game in a Phoenix uniform. Locked On Suns, all smiles as the KD era in Phoenix has officially begun.
What a way to start the Kevin Durant era for the Phoenix Suns. 23 points on 10 of 15 shooting and a 14-point win. Brendan Clean here with Locked On Suns coming to you after that 105-91 victory in Charlotte and Kevin Durant's debut. Durant was excellent. Durant did his thing. He looked like himself. That in and of itself is pretty special after 2 months out and his first game in a new system, in a new structure, in a new environment. Not to mention Devin Booker, his first truly big game since he came back, since he has looked not like himself out of the All-Star break. 37 points, 15 of 26 shooting, 7 assists to just 1 turnover for him. Those guys combined for 60. It looks smooth. It looks effortless. It looks great in the Suns bag a win. What more could you ask for? For more on these Suns, listen to Locked On Suns wherever you get your podcasts.
The Celtics got a big lead, then they almost blew it thanks to a Herculean effort from Donovan Mitchell and the Cavs. Locked On Celtics and Locked On Cavs are here with us for the full recap.
Celtics built a 21-point lead, let go of the rope a little too early, but still held on to beat the Cavs for the first time this season. I'm John Corrales of the Locked On Celtics podcast. There are 2 reasons why the Celtics were able to do this. Number one, Jayson Tatum was super aggressive, attacking the rim first and then getting 3-pointers off of that. 15 of his 21 shots were not 3-pointers. He shot 4 of 6 from 3. After missing his first 4 in a row. He got to the free throw line 14 times. This is the recipe for Jayson Tatum to be the MVP candidate. 41 points, 11 rebounds, 8 assists. You pile up the 41 points at the free throw line and not putting up a ton of 3-pointers. You're not Damian Lillard. The other thing, the Celtics limited the Cavs after a 10 second chance point first quarter, just 6 the rest of the way. The rebounding fell in Boston's favor big time after that first quarter, and that leads to a big win and a potential playoff preview against the Cleveland Cavaliers.
The Battle of New York basketball seems to be all about the Knicks these days as they got a blowout win at MSG. Locked On Nets and Locked On Knicks are in to go over the winning and losing sides.
Doug Norrie, Locked On Nets, coming at you after the boys from Brooklyn head on over to Madison Square Garden to face the Knicks and promptly get destroyed. That is becoming a theme for Brooklyn over the last couple games. A rough one against the Bucks, a close buzzer beater against the Hawks, a destruction at the hands of the Bulls. And this is a team that is spiraling right now since the trade deadline. They have lost 6 of their last 7 games, and it's hard to see a ton of light at the end of the tunnel with the way they're currently constructed. Hey, you trade Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. This is sort of what you get. We're going to talk about the prospects in Brooklyn, what to expect from the team going forward, if there is any light at the end of this tunnel. Can we hang our hat on performances like the ones from Mikal Bridges and or Cam Johnson, or is this a season that is quickly headed down the drain? We're going to be talking about all that over at Locked On Nets.
So I was watching this really cool NBA 2K stream earlier today, and the Knicks beat the Nets 142-118. It was crazy. They had 81 points in the first half. Like, how does that even happen? Oh, that was a real game. Never mind. Alex Wolf from Locked On Knicks here. And yes, the Knicks had 81 points in the first half, 142 in regulation. Absolutely burning the Nets off in this game. No pun intended, although whatever. They shot 20 of 35 from 3, and Jalen Brunson erupts for 30 points in the first half, 39 points overall. Julius Randle finishes with 21, 8 and 8. Quentin Grimes catches fire from behind the arc, shooting 6 of 9. Very nice. And it was just a fantastic game for the Knicks. Hopefully more video game performances to come.
Milwaukee continues to cruise during their win streak. The Magic were their latest victim. Locked On Bucks goes over that win last night. Locked On Magic looking at things that need to change for this team moving forward.
The Bucks blow out the Orlando Magic and make it 16 straight wins. My name's Kane Pittman. I'm the host of the Locked On Bucks podcast. It was going to be interesting to see who actually played in this game on a back-to-back. Giannis ended up playing, and we know that's interesting. He's been banged up a little bit of late. Drew Holiday was there. Brooke Lopez was there. Even Joe Ingles was there, and we know this is the first time he's played in a back-to-back coming off the ACL. Chris Middleton did not play. They continued to bring him along slowly, but another 22-point win. And ultimately, I'm just interested to see where the mentality of this Bucks team is. It's been a slow build. It's been sputtering at times, particularly on the offensive end, but with a bunch of guys that have been through this grind before, and they know what it takes to win in the postseason. It does look like a team that potentially sees the calendar, sees that we're flipping over to March, and understands that the race to the postseason is absolutely on. And this is the time where this Bucks team can solidify their postseason credentials, championship credentials as well. Check out the Locked On Bucks podcast, wherever you get your podcasts.
This is Philip Rossreich, the host of Locked On Magic, and the Orlando Magic fall to the Milwaukee Bucks 139-117. There's not really a whole lot that needs to be said. The Milwaukee Bucks are now on a 16-game win streak. They are the best team in the Eastern Conference and a team streaking towards a championship. And as good as the Orlando Magic have played, as good as the Orlando Magic are and can be, they are not at that level yet. Not at least when the Bucks are running at all cylinders. And that's what happened. The bigger issue for Orlando, though, is that the loss against Milwaukee highlights a bigger problem for this team, and a problem that's going to have to be solved in the offseason. There just isn't math for the Orlando Magic to win a lot of these games. The Magic are not a great three-point shooting team, middle of the pack in percentage, but near the bottom of the league in attempts per game. They also give up some of the most three-pointers in the league per game. Milwaukee made 15 threes in the first half. The Magic just don't have the shooting or the offense to keep up with teams when they're able to hit shots like that. That is a math problem, and Orlando's got to find a way to solve it in the offseason.
Coming up, no LeBron, Anthony Davis, or D'Angelo Russell, but the Lakers still get a win. This is Locked On Game to Game, NBA. Today's edition of Locked On Game to Game is brought to you by FanDuel. We are at the midway point of the NBA season, and now is the perfect time for you to download FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. New customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your first bet doesn't win. So just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Then you can bet on everything from the money line to point scorers and threes drained. As for tonight's game, it looks like the Sixers are slight underdogs in Dallas. That's something to take a look at. FanDuel even lets you combine that bet with other bets for a chance at a bigger payout with a same-game parlay. So don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Welcome back. You're listening to Locked On Game to Game NBA. I'm your host, Kainani Stevens. Thank you once again for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. No stars, no problem for LA. The Lakers get a win on the road in OKC on Wednesday night. Locked On Lakers goes over the surprising but much needed victory.
Hey everyone, this is Brian Kamenetsky, host of Locked On Lakers. The Lakers take the floor Wednesday in Oklahoma City without LeBron James, without Anthony Davis, without D'Angelo Russell, and they get a win, 123-117 over the Thunder. A huge victory for the Lakers. A ton has been made of the new depth the Lakers have following the trade deadline. That was really on full display tonight. Had to be done given all the players that were missing. Lakers had 6 players in double figures, led by Dennis Schroeder, who bounced back from a terrible game on Tuesday with a really nice one on Wednesday, 26 points to lead the Lakers in scoring. Austin Reeves had 19. Troy Brown Jr., 4 of 7 from three-point range, 7 of 10 overall, and he finishes with 19 points as well. It's hard to overstate just how big a victory this is for the Lakers, who split their back-to-back and have only lost once since the All-Star break. They should get Anthony Davis and D'Angelo Russell back for Friday's game against Minnesota, another huge one for the standings, but a surprise victory for the Lakers. They're still hanging in there. Much more to come on Thursday's Locked On Lakers.
An abysmal first half of hoops between the Rockets and Grizzlies, but Memphis figured it out in the second half, and they got the win. Locked On Grizzlies is in now to give us all the details.
If it was possible to set the game of basketball back a few decades just in one contest between two hapless NBA teams, then the Memphis Grizzlies and Houston Rockets might have pulled it off on Wednesday night, but then the third quarter happened, as it usually does for Memphis. Plus, Desmond Bane happened, and the Grizzlies were able to pull away from the Houston Rockets, being a little less hapless than Houston. I'm Joe Mullinax of Locked On Grizzlies, and Desmond Bane, since he returned from his toe injury, and especially in the calendar year 2023, has had some success offensively. He's been shooting the ball well, but the scoring volume that was there before his toe injury back in November has not returned. It popped back up tonight, scored 30 points for the first time since that injury, and the Grizzlies are going to need every bit of Desmond Bane heading into the rest of this road trip that they're currently on. Denver Nuggets on Friday, then both LA teams Sunday and Tuesday night. No offense to Houston, the road's about to get tougher, and they're going to need all the help they can get. Will the Grizzlies to hold off the Sacramento Kings for the 2 seed in the Western Conference?
A bit of a lineup switch, jumpstarting the Pelicans and Brandon Ingram, of course, to a win over Portland last night. Locked On Pelicans goes over those changes in New Orleans.
Brandon Ingram played like an absolute all-star, dropping 40 in the Pelicans' much-needed win over the Blazers, but it was a new lineup which might just unlock the team and get them back on track. I'm Jake Madison, host of Locked On Pelicans and Locked On NBA. The Pelicans were desperate for a win to keep pace for a playoff spot, and Brandon Ingram delivered. Going against a scorching hot Damian Lillard, Ingram matched him all night long, going for 40 points. With Zion Williamson still out, you absolutely need your best players to deliver. But head coach Willie Green may have also figured out a killer lineup for the Pelicans. Due to injuries, you saw Green run small forward Herb Jones at center to close the game, which allowed the Pelicans to add another shooter on the court, and that opened things up for Ingram like we haven't seen in a while. The Pelicans' offense has struggled recently, that's putting it mildly, and the small ball lineup gave them a big jolt offensively. If that works, the Pelicans can get back on track until Zion comes back and push for the postseason.
Nothing going right for Miami last night. They fell to the Sixers pretty handily. Locked On Heat goes over the many issues for Miami right now.
After a brief reprieve, Miami's inability to make threes returned on Wednesday night in a big way. I'm Wes Goldberg from Locked On Heat. Despite getting a break when Joel Embiid was ruled out with a sore foot, the Heat lost to the 76ers 119-96 to begin an important 6-game homestand. There really wasn't anything to feel good about for the Heat, but the main issue remained the three-point shooting. After making 40% of their threes in their win in Philly on Monday, the Heat tonight missed 21 of their 28 three-point attempts, including 13 in a row. The Heat have now shot worse than 30% in 3 of their last 5 games and have lost 5 of their last 6 as they continue to make it harder for themselves to make it into the playoffs. As it does so much, the season comes down to whether the Heat are making shots, and last season's best three-point shooting team now finds themselves as one of the league's worst. The loss drops the Heat to 33-31 loss ahead of the Hawks for the number 7 seed, but they remain 2 losses behind the Nets for the number 6 seed after the Nets lost to the Knicks. For more on tonight's game, including how the Heat can bounce back, tune in to Locked On Heat on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Mental errors late cost the Pistons against the Bulls, but both teams looked like they were trying to give things away at different points in the game last night. Locked On Bulls and Locked On Pistons are in with the breakdown.
The Chicago Bulls hold off a fourth quarter collapse to get a 2-point victory over the Detroit Pistons. Despite Zach LaVine's 41 points, the Bulls almost choked this game away. I'm Hayes, one of the hosts of Locked On Bulls. You guys can follow us over at Locked On Bulls. But the Chicago Bulls in this game, Zach LaVine leading all scorers throughout this game and playing one of the better games offensively of the season for him. DeMar DeRozan, despite some issues in the fourth quarter, chips in another 21 points to help this team get the victory. But it was a fourth quarter in which the Bulls gave up 29 points and only scored 16 that they almost choked this game away. They were able to do enough down the stretch, and it took a lucky mishap from rookie Jaden Ivey for the Bulls to still get this victory. But this is a much needed victory for a team that is trying to fight and claw their way into a play-in spot. Make sure you guys are following us over on Locked On Bulls. We're going to break down everything going on with the Chicago Bulls day in and day out. Thank you for watching. Peace.
It feels like the state of Michigan is too familiar with calling a timeout when you don't have a timeout. Host of Locked On Pistons podcast, Kuka Hill here. Just like with Chris Webber many, many years ago, the Pistons, in this case, have the ball late on an inbounds with 0 timeouts, but Jaden Ivey calls a timeout when they don't have it. They lose possession. The Bulls get a free throw, extend the lead to 3, and that basically was the ball game right there. The Pistons should be applauded, though, for keeping this a game somehow late in this game. The Bulls were destroying them for the majority of this game. Zach LaVine had the most effortless 41 points I've ever witnessed. It didn't even look like the dude was breaking a sweat. So they're lucky that this was even a close game to begin with, but definitely a mental lapse late by Jay and Ivy, who otherwise had a fine game. Definitely sunk the Pistons here. Bojan Bogdanovic probably is the biggest reason why this is even a close game. He came back with 34 to Zach LaVine, but at the end of the day, can't have that kind of mistake at the end of the game. Pistons lose this one.
That will do it for this edition of Locked On Game to Game NBA. Thank you for making Locked On your first listen every weekday. Make sure you're subscribed to Locked On NBA and your favorite team's Locked On podcast on YouTube and wherever else you get your podcasts from. I'm Kainani Stevens. This has been Locked On Game to Game.